Oh, so the music is keeping on. Hello, everybody. It's Kirsten's live chat time with loads of hindrances thanks to lovely Mercury retrograde. But nevertheless, I'm here live and I'm here today with Kenn Payne. Hello, Kenn.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm very happy that you found the time to be with me. Who, for everybody who doesn't know Kenn, you're living in the Middle West, you said? It sounded like a Western, Midwest.
Yeah, the West Midlands.
The West Midlands, it was, right. The West Midlands from Britain in lovely Coventry, which sounds like a Jane Austen novel to me. And and I forgot to switch on actually the crossroads because I was thinking of other stuff. Let me do that. Yes, and you are a tarot expert, but you're much more of a Hekate expert, and that's why you're here today, and that's why you see the crossroads behind us. Um, you work or have been engaged with the Coven, is it right? The Coven of Hekate?
Covenant of
Covenant,
Hekate, yeah.
sorry. The Coven is something else, yeah. So, would you like to tell us a bit about this, what you're
Mm,
doing there? And of course, for everybody who doesn't know it, who Hecate is?
yeah, so I'll start with Hecate. For those that don't know, she's a goddess of the classical world, mostly associated in sort of ancient Greece, ancient Rome, but with potentially earlier origins. She kind of has become this all-pervading deity of a lot of different spheres of influence. So she started out as quite a beneficent goddess, quite one that could sort of protect and bless and grant fortune. And she's kind of over time developed other things such as her associations with witchcraft and the underworld and the dead and sort of the mysteries of sort of life, death, and rebirth. Um, she is most commonly depicted as like a triple formed goddess, but again in antiquity before then it was as a single form. Um, she's the torch bearer, the key bearer. Um, the world soul. She's this very broad um, and in-depth goddess. And for the Covenant of Hecate, that was a group that was kind of founded, I suppose, on this unification of Hecate devotees. Circa 2011, I think it started with the work of Sarita Dieste, author and priestess. Um,
Sarita is her name.
yes, she wrote Circle for Hecate, Hecate Liminal Rites, as well as other books with her ex-husband and things on things like Wicca and the goddess Artemis and the Morrigan and things like that. So she's been quite heavily worked with Hecate, for a long period, and the group has kind of evolved over time to be this like online global phenomenon, I suppose, where we unify under Hecate. We see her kind of as Sotera, the savior, and the cosmic world soul, which is something that was referenced in the Chaldean oracles in the sort of I think it's between the first and the third century common era, but we still express the fact that different people interact with her in different ways. They see her in different ways. There are groups across the world really where people within the covenant who have attained torchbearer or key bearer status, which are honorary roles for people that have done sort of work within the community to educate and to facilitate and guide people. And so there's always been this kind of learning aspect to the covenant. I was a founding member, and I was a torchbearer and a key bearer until fairly recently, and I've just recently changed my role. I'm the first to be given the sort of title role of companion, which is just a term for the retired key bearers or torch bearers. So I'm still a part of the covenant, but I have a lot of other things I need to sort of focus on, including my work with my tarot and my oracle and things like that. So yeah.
And can everybody be part of this covenant?
Yeah, so at the moment there's membership for free. We don't there's no charge for the membership. There are several membership centers facilitated by different key bearers. And then so we have some. I think there's one or two in America. I think there's one in Spain or Brazil. So we do have like a Spanish speaking aspect of the group as well as Portuguese. And we you just kind of have to sort of there's no I say there's no stipulations. There's only like guidelines. So we kind of just say, we say that we view her as Satira and the cosmic world soul, and there are what we call the five virtues, um, which are closely linked to sort of like the Platonic virtues, but the virtues of Hecate that we sort of encourage people to operate within, being strength, temperance, wisdom, justice, and compassion. And then it's just a case of being part of a wider community and just learning from each other and sharing. There are group activities sometimes, and there's been events such as the Hekate Symposium, which has been in like a physical event in the past, but sort of off the back of the pandemic became a virtual online thing, which enabled a lot more people to be able to attend who couldn't necessarily travel to England.
Okay. So I have not put this into the show notes, but you will find Kenn's Instagram account in the show notes. And I'm sure if you want to know more about this, you can get in touch with him. He's a very chatty guy and will keep you updated. You just mentioned key and torch. Are these important symbols for Hecate, or is it just usual to have these in orders like this?
To be honest, the key and the torch are probably two of the most synonymous symbols with the goddess. She was often depicted holding one or two torches. The keys, her titles of key bearer and cosmic key bearer, they kind of and that it kind of linked her to the fact that she was put in the liminal spaces at sort of gateways, crossroads, entrances to homes, and things like that. So they are a long-standing symbol, but obviously they also have a lot of modern associations with illumination, knowledge, unlocking, and guarding of secrets and things like that.
And the crossroads?
So yeah, again, it's another one of those things that as a goddess of liminality, she became synonymous with the crossroads, as this place that kind of exists outside of all of the other destinations and the routes. They are kind of like non spaces, and obviously in antiquity they were kind of associated more um, unfavorably because they were tended to be very remote. They tended to be places where criminals might get dumped or hung. People may lay in wait to prey on travelers. You might find wild dogs or wild wolves hanging around. So they're not really the places you would want to find yourself um, loitering for too long. And so it seemed quite synonymous that she would become there would be this deity that was associated with all of these things, and she, you would placate her at the crossroads. You give her offerings so that you would be able to, go on your way safely.
So this is kind of the connection to witches, I guess, which are also to be found at crossroads, right?
Yeah, again, that the aspect of witchcraft, this ability to cast spells and to transmute forces of physical and spiritual. Again, it's a liminal thing, and so Hecate became presided over that, and the fact that people would go to these remote areas to either cast spells or collect unsavory materials, shall we say, such as hangman's blood, or noxious herbs that might happen to be growing in the locality, and then put them towards sorcerous uses. And it was only in sort of the later antiquity, as time went on, that this darker and more malicious and almost demonic aspect of her would start to sort of take on a form of itself. And then she still retained all of her previous associations as a protectress, as a benefactress, and a creatrix.
Creatrix, I like this. So I want to say hello to everybody who has shown up by now. Thanks for being here. And Dimitar Eule made some comments which we can use, I think, to switch over to the oracle you did, because she says that she knows lots of people who try to develop themselves, and they all kind of end up with Hekate in recent times, and it's almost as if she is gathering her family lately. So, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of termed it the Hecatean Renaissance, because in the time, in the last 15 years or so that I've been actively sort of exploring her, there has been this upsurge of people being drawn to her, and her revealing herself to other people, to sort of almost, as she said, to sort of bring together this group of people, this family, of like-minded individuals. And yeah, I always kind of chuckle to myself when things like that happen, when people say, oh well, I wasn't expecting to do it with this goddess, I wanted a different goddess or whatever. And it's like, when Hecate kind of shows up, it's kind of a case of, if she claims you, she claims you.
I was just thinking, she is a very old goddess, isn't she?
Yeah, so the first literary references date back to around sort of the 8th to the 6th century BCE.
Mm.
So, and that's when she was ported into sort of the Greek pantheon. Um, Whereas although there's not quite as much extant evidence and archaeological record yet, um, there are tantalizing threads that kind of span off to show that she obviously predates the Greco-Roman world, and has origins potentially in Turkey, or ancient Thrace, like modern day Bulgaria and places like that. So she kind of spreads her web.
So, because I was just thinking of Vesta, who is one of the oldest goddesses, and she is connected to fire, and
Mhm.
Hecate with torch, whether there was some connection with day and night or something. But this is just
It's an
something.
interesting parallel, because they were both very much goddesses that became linked with the human condition.
Mhm.
So of Vesta, Hestia, she left Olympus to reside within the hearths and homes of man, and Hecate has always been inextricably linked with the human condition. So she was seen as being able to help birth. She would guide you through life, and she would also ferry you in death.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I don't know of any sort of extant connection between the fire and the torches, but there's definitely similarities as to how they were venerated in antiquity.
Very interesting. We met each other in Manchester in mid of July for the Tabby. Is it still called Tabby? No, it's called something else now.
I think it's still Tabby. I think they've just changed what it stands for.
International Tarot Association, right? Is it now?
Yeah, I think it was the Tarot Association of the British Isles, and I
Exactly.
think but they've now changed it to the Tarot Association of British and International Members, if I remember rightly.
Something like that, yeah. So we met there and you talked a lot about Hekate, but one of the things you also did was to introduce your deck, which you have done together with Chris Butler, who has been here as well at one point to introduce us to his Sun Tarot.
Mm.
And yeah, could you perhaps tell us a bit about this deck?
Yeah, so I mean, this is an oracle deck rather than a tarot deck, but this is born from the years of my devotion with the goddess and my exploration of her. It started life as a personal tool that I was like very rudimentarily sort of sticking together with little printouts from the internet, and it just so happened that I started to use one of Chris's other decks, the Healing Light Tarot,
Hmm.
and through that I kind of started to see ideas of the Hecate oracle, but in his signature style. And I just happened to take a chance and reach out to him and say, "Would you be interested in a collaboration?" And he'd already had a couple of failed collaborations, so he was very skeptical. And he kind of tried to sort of put me off and give me all these questions and things that he didn't think I'd be able to answer, but I unfortunately had all of the answers and all of the information that he required. um and yeah, so we kind of extrapolated and evolved my base ideas, and it became this 60 card oracle deck that actually really encapsulates, but still at the same time only really scratches the surface of the goddess. It's divided into aspects of her cult titles, or epithets as they were known, symbolic associations, and then um, other deities and spirits that are linked with her. So yeah.
So it's kind of the first cut I see looks like this Lilith figure you see always on every page when you have a talk about Lilith.
Mm.
There's of course she has two torches as far as I can see,
So
and
they what that one is the card of Protistos, the primordial. So it's a card of origins, and as I mentioned before about her origins not necessarily being focally pinned down yet. Um, and although I've kind of taken the creative license with utilizing this famous Queen of Night relief, the Bernie relief image of either Lilith or Ereshkigal or any something like that. It was the human animal hybrid that kind of spoke to that sort of primal aspect, this unknowable aspect.
mhm,
And she is standing on sort of like a water surface,
mhm,
was meant to sort of hint at the primordial waters of creation. And then the backdrop is actually the pillars of creation, which are from the Hubble Space Telescope. It's a nebulous cloud, which I just thought they really encapsulated and hinted at the torches, as well as the origins of life in the universe.
interesting. So it's all about different aspects of the goddess, and obviously you will get some advice when you draw the cards. What kind
Yeah,
of Hecate, or what Hecate aspect you're supposed to integrate at present. Um, the last one seems to be about the triple goddess. I think you haven't talked about this yet.
yeah. So I mean, that card is the most manifest goddess and the
Hmm.
card of diversity. So it's an image of the goddess in silhouette being drawn by a chariot, and in each of her six hands, she's holding a different one of the symbols. So she has a torch, and a sword, a key, a laurel wreath, a rope, and forgotten what the other one is. Oh, a
Well, we
snake.
can't see it.
I can just see it now. A snake. And I put the triple moon sort of symbol above it because she is associated with the moon again from antiquity, and then obviously through time she's been associated with Artemis and Selene, as well as being seen as a triple goddess herself, which in more modern times she's seen in this crone aspect of the triple goddess, whereas in antiquity it was three maidens, all of the same age, that were kind of standing back to back around a central pillar.
Mhm. So this is the connection I personally know most with Hekate, that she is part of the triple goddess. In tarot, when I started doing tarot classes, I was taught that she is kind of one of the triple goddess is in the major arcana. She's one aspect of it,
Mm-hmm.
which is the moon card. Most people go for her when it connect her to the moon card. But
Mm-hmm.
you in Manchester told us that Hekate can be found in every major arcana. You made quite a presentation.
Yes, it was. It was a very full-on presentation.
I loved it, but we can't show the presentation here, obviously, but we can highlight some aspects of her. You gave me some files to show. And first of all, you sent me this. What does this tell us?
So this was just to illustrate that Hecate does appear in tarot quite often, but she is often usually just a single card, as you mentioned. More often than not is the moon card. But with this one, I just wanted to illustrate the fact that we have her from the Universal Goddess Tarot as the Hermit in that sort of more crone depiction, an older woman. One of my personal favorites from the Olympus Tarot of the Devil with the three animal heads, which is a very much more um, terrifying aspect of the goddess.
It's great, yeah.
Which I just happened. It's not one you see very often, and so to see it um, myself, I was kind of really quite taken with it. And then again, similarly, the Witch's Tarot, she is depicted as the Moon card. And then in the Mythos Tarot, she was depicted as the magician, and you can see her in that sort of triple aspect of the three same-aged younger females, and obviously symbols like the torch and the dagger and the key that she has at her disposal.
I was wondering when we talked about the crossroads whether Mercury, which is linked to the magician, has a connection to Hecate because he's also often found at crossroads. Do you know something
Yeah,
about
so I mean, Mercury, obviously his Greek counterpart, Hermes.
Hermes?
Hecate and Hermes have very similar spheres of influence. They are both liminal deities. They are both able to traverse between the realms, which is something that certain gods can't do. They can go to the heavens, they can go to the underworld, and they can come to the middle realm, our world. They're both psychopomps, so they both ferry the souls of the dead after death. Interestingly, in the original story of the abduction of Persephone, it's actually Hecate that is quite intrinsic in the return, whereas in the later modern sort of simplifications and translations, Hecate is sidelined and Hermes takes the main negotiator role, if for want of a better word.
Ah, yes,
Uh,
I seem to remember this. She is not the grandmother or something like this, is she? Of
no, no. So again, she's referred to when she is referred to in the Homeric hymn to Demeter. She is referred to as being bright crowned and sort of not depicted as
old.
to any degree of age or old age, but she comes to Demeter to offer her support and to offer her help, and helps to sort of, I suppose, helps to sort of orchestrate Demeter's grief into Technical Mercury
I,
retrograde.
wanted to do something else, and this happened. Never mind.
But yeah, she became. There is a bit in in the story later on where Demeter is in Eleusis, disguised as an old matron, sort of in a sort of deep state of mourning, and there is this character, either Iambe or Balbo, who kind of tells bawdy jokes and supposedly, lifts her skirts to flash her nethers, to make the goddess smile. And there are some later things that kind of link that to this aspect of it being linked to Hecate, so in certain respects. But the main role of Hecate is this companion and guide, both to Demeter in her grief, but also later to Persephone in her constant toing and froing from the underworld to the realm of the gods.
Yeah, die bitte Eule says I should stop talking about Mercury. I think she's right. Um, yeah, very interesting. Before we talk about the tarot links, I was just still thinking about this, that Hecate seems to be showing up for many people at present. Do you think, or what do you think is her message for us as modern people right now?
That's a big question. Um, I mean, I
Yay.
definitely, I definitely feel that, for at least from my understanding of things, because she has always been so close to us, even back in ancient times, her associations were all the things that we either had concerns about or that we needed. So she provided protection, she provided um, abundance and fertility and things like that. So even though our modern world is slightly different and we're not quite necessarily living in the sort of simplistic extremes of antiquity, she still has this very readily accessible current. So she is very much a case of being able to help people self develop, to process trauma, to heal, to grow, to learn, aspects of of yourself, whether that's from a witchcraft side of things or even just in a sort of pragmatic archetypal way. So on as far as like psychology and things go. Um, and I do just think that because she has this aspect of her being the cosmic world soul, so therefore she is the source of everything, basically. Um, that she's kind of just imminent. It's really hard to kind of put into words adequately. I just think that because of the work that other people have done, like Sarita Dieste, Cindy Brannan, and other authors and content creators who have really kind of championed the way for relevant information about the goddess. I think because of that, now when people encounter the name or the pull to find out more, there is a lot more relevant information that enables people to act properly, on their sort of on that pull. Whereas I know when I first started, the vast majority of the resources were very unsourced tertiary repetitions of, oh, she's the crone goddess of witchcraft,
Mm,
end of. you know that was pretty much everything that was constantly told and retold.
mm.
um but yeah, I do just think that she can show us a lot about ourselves, and I think in the current state of the sort of world chaos, I think that's quite a telling thing. I think we all do need to sort of take stock and look at what we're doing and who we are, and what that means for ourselves and the planet and the future. And she's intrinsically linked with all of that.
Yeah, and all the examples, there's a No, it's okay. All the examples you've been giving, we always see the torch on these cards. So um, I was just making the connection to the devil, who's having a torch. But you kind of said anyway that in all the uh, in every major arcana, as I said before, we can find Hekate.
Mhm.
And we're going to discuss now a few examples. You started with the higher digits, and the first one you sent me was death. And
Yeah,
well, you also already said she's a psychopomp.
yeah. So I mean, I'll kind of give a brief background on the nature of the talk. Obviously, it
Please.
was Hecate in it was Hecate within the major arcana, um, and the way I kind of viewed it was, whereas most people are familiar with the fool's journey, as as regards to interpreting the majors. And what I did is I changed the figure of the fool into the devotee. So, for all intents and purposes, the person seeking out Hecate. And then every other major is aspects of her that you could encounter or learn from. And we kind of go through them all. Some of them are more recognizable than others. Um, I quite liked the to start with the death card, just because it's one of those cards that, you know even today, people still react when it comes out if they don't have a good solid knowledge of what tarot is, because it is that, I think it is just that word death. It's hardwired into us to react. Um, and so some of the titles from antiquity, Thanatos and Nikia, Deathbringer, goddess of death, and her associations with the underworld. And what I was trying to do was I kind of was drawing from the elements of the Rider-Waite-Smith, the well-known symbolism, but actually drawing the parallels between those and Hecate. And so, to start with, the figure that's next to the card, the black and the white figure, this is the Orphic goddess, Melanoi. And she was a figure that was kind of born of heaven and the underworld. And in certain later sort of depictions of her, she was described as being half sort of light and half dark, to sort of illustrate that juxtaposition and that polarity. And I thought that kind of was quite evident in the coloration of the black clad death with the white horse. um, and then I kind of started to see a parallel then between the Six of Wands and the death card in this, at least in composition. And I kind of thought maybe this is reference to things sort of like, victory over death, as over symbolic death, or victory over these big changes that in my experience Hecate is very much responsible for sort of instigating. And then things like you can't really see it so much in that, but in the background you've got like the river, um, or
You mean
this
on the
water.
death card?
Sorry, on the death card.
Yeah, yeah.
um, and that, that to me represented the four rivers of the underworld. Everybody knows this, the river Styx. That's the main one that most people know. But there was the Acheron, the Cocytus, and the Phlegethon, and the river of Lethe as well, the memory one. So that kind of had that connection for me. And then I actually never noticed it before, but there's like a little tiny boat on that river. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of like pointed to me for to Charon, the ferryman, who sort of ferried the souls across the rivers into the underworld, um, into the asphodel plain. So the image of the plant on the far right is asphodel, and this was a plant associated with the realms of the dead. It was also it was sort of wreaths of it were given to put on statues of Hecate and Artemis, and it's also was supposedly one of the plants within the fabled Hecate's garden, which is described in the Argonautica, or Jason and the Argonauts for people that don't know classics as that well. But the Asphodel Meadows were the place where basically everybody went. You know, the average Joe went to the Asphodel Plains. You had to be, you know, a hero to go to Elysium, and a downright evil person to go to Tartarus.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking that also the Knight of Cups reflects very much the Death card.
Mm.
I was just thinking about what you were saying while you were talking. It's really I like these connections. So, but what does this tell us about the Death card if we now connect it to Hecate?
So, I mean, I think because obviously most people think it as a card of endings and beginnings, but again, this association with the knee-jerk reaction that death or the ending of something familiar or that we have become accustomed to, I think Hecate helps to, in the same way she acts sort of in a midwifery role when we are born, she acts in a similar role at these transitional moments, to ease us through to the next phase. And you know, death can be as difficult as birth. You know, as far as, you know, figuratively speaking, we are creatures of habit. We don't like change, really. We like things to stay on an even keel. So when these big upheavals happen, Hecate is very much the sort of steadfast constant that can help us to balance ourselves and not resist. And I think the pain and um, anxieties come from the resistance, whereas, you know, Hecate in this maternal um, midwife of life and death and rebirth, she's kind of just there to say, look, it's not as bad as you think. You know, I'm with you all the way. And I think that even something as I suppose dark in a way as seeing her as this goddess of death, this death bringer, these are always things that she's bringing for our highest good. These are the things that we need to let go of and that we need to move forward, because again, in the death card, you have these two pillars in the distance with the dawn or the light that's coming, and in the card image that I've got from my oracle deck, which is card 43, the mysteries. Again, you've got this kind of very thin veil, so almost like the veil between one state and another. But it is this: if you surrender to, I suppose, if you surrender to that liminal point of, you know, death in a figurative term, you pass through to the next phase. You know, but until you do that, you can't progress. And so it's, I think there is a degree of surrender in the card. You kind of got to surrender to the higher powers know better, and that everything is happening for a reason.
I really like this because I really don't like that people kind of say that the Death card is just transformation. It really is not what I experience with this card, and uh, and I never thought about this. Thank you for this. That the birth is also painful. I should know. I've been through it. Well, we all have been through it, but. Because I really like Rachel Pollack's approach to the hanged man being somebody who's born and hanging on his cord.
Umbilical. Yeah.
I hate this word. And but I never continued thinking that death then must be a birth. If this is kind of his process of being born, and this is painful. That's really good. I like this. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You know me. Once I get started, I just start talking.
So enlighten me more about. Obviously, the moon is, as I already said, an obvious
Hmm.
card, but perhaps it's for people who are not as highbrow as the two of us.
So, I mean, you often find the moon card. People say, "Oh, it's a card of fears and deceits and illusions and things like that." And I've never really quite personally seen it that way. I am far more a moon lover than a sun worshipper, as far as my personal preference. And as I mentioned before, Hecate has been associated with the moon for a long time, but it's interestingly that she's never been seen necessarily as the moon. That has still been Selene, the titan of the moon, but she had these lunar qualities and these lunar aspects, which then later became. It kind of enabled her to be conflated so easily with Selene and Artemis specifically. Um, but as far as the classical card goes, obviously you have this. Um, you have this kind of two columns, these two towers or whatever it is, and I just thought that they were very much reminiscent of, if you see the picture that's slightly to the right of the image of the sort of ruins, the two columns, and then the gateway. That
Hmm.
is Hecate's temple in Lagina in modern day Turkey. And this entranceway was one of the first things they re-erected when they started excavations. Um, and obviously, since then, there has been more excavations and more um, repairs and such. And obviously, they're finding more and more out all of the time. But it was this again. It was this idea of entranceways, of liminal points between one side and another. That the moon was kind of illustrating, especially when you've got the path that kind of runs up into the distance between them. And then you have the two dogs, which some people see them, one as a dog and one as a more sort of wolf-like or wild dog.
Yeah.
And I think that very much does equate to our unconscious and our conscious aspects, and the very emotional um, qualities that the moon can instill in us. We can find ourselves a little bit more highly strung when the moon is full, or maybe a bit more sort of low beat and depressed if the moon is dark. And again, I think there's the juxtaposition between the domesticated and the wild. We kind of try and find that middle ground. We don't want to be completely docile, but we don't want to be completely out of control. um, and then I found an interesting parallel when I started to look at the tree of life, and the associations with the tarot. It's not something that I know a huge amount of, so I was kind of not really wanting to get too bogged down in the details. But when we looked at where the moon was, which is it's sort of just one above the first sphere. It actually situates itself in the middle of a crossroads, literally a three-way crossroads. So you've come
Yeah.
from Earth to the moon, and obviously the two directions, you've got the logic of Mercury, or you've got the passion of Venus. And again, I think that kind of illustrates that sort of domestic and wild polarity that we can move through.
Hmm.
And then obviously the moon, the waters, the emotions, the unconscious, dreams, intuition. And then we have the crayfish. Now, a lot of people are always like, "Oh, what's that? What's that there for?" Because it seems a bit out of place. But when I started to actually think about the literal crayfish or any crustacean, in order for them to grow and for them to progress, they have to basically molt. They shed their shell, and in that moment after they've done it, they are incredibly vulnerable until the shell hardens. And I thought that this was very similar to how we can sometimes feel after we emerge from the subconscious waters, that we are growing and processing, and sometimes we can feel very vulnerable. And the prospect of coming out of the water, having shed our old shells, and then being faced with the sight of two dogs that may eat us or may not eat us. Sometimes it's easy to think, I'm just going to stay in the water, but actually the path goes forward. The goddess is looking down from the moon, and again there's another transitional stage once you pass through those gates. It's a challenge, and it's one that the goddess is putting towards you, like she does, I find, throughout the whole of the deck. It's all about the challenges for the lessons she wants you to learn, but obviously she's not going to do it all for you. It's always the active role is in your own power. And so I find it felt quite interesting that the literal life cycle of crustaceans, this shedding of the old, but then this moment of vulnerability before you become hardened again, I suppose, by life's trials and tribulations.
I really like this explanation. I haven't come across it before, I think. I personally, I connected very much to your thought as well. So this sphere of the moon. I also connected a lot to the hermit, obviously because of the quintessence, but also when you put the hermit from the Waite-Smith tarot next to the moon, you will see that the hermit has exactly the same movement of the head as Hekate or whoever it is in the moon. For me, I see the crayfish as a sign of Cancer, which is the sign of the soul, which is the sign of the IC. And the mountains are for me the Capricorn energy. So the soul has to move towards Capricorn somehow, but I think it's related to what you're saying. I like this a lot. Thank you for that again.
It's okay.
So I think we should do another one example last, and then we need to come to a finish, kind of, though it's very interesting. Luckily, I have your talk on video. I can rewatch it, and everybody who I think you can buy these the ones from Tabby, can't you? I'm not
I'm not
sure.
sure,
I'm not
but I
sure
think
either.
I was gonna look at trying to record it for my own channel,
Uh,
myself. So it will hopefully be out there at some point.
yeah, but everybody who wants to get more about this, you also have a YouTube channel, right?
Yes, it's not had much new stuff on it apart from these lives that I've been doing.
Mm.
I did some lives with Tara Stash and Bobby Fierro and some with Chris Butler as well. But I'm working towards putting more of my own content onto my channel
Yeah.
in the coming weeks.
So, will you prefer to talk about the star or the sun?
Ooh. Um, well, let's have the sun, seeing that we have had the moon. So
Okay.
why not keep it balanced?
Yeah. You said you didn't care so much for the sun, so.
No, I mean, personally, I overheat too much in
Ah,
literal sun, so I just don't like it. I don't mind the brightness of it. I just don't like the heat.
yeah.
That's pretty
Can
much my.
totally relate to that.
So in the sun card, we have this title of Thasimbrotos, the bringer of light to mortals, and again, her associations with light are often automatically associated with the lunar aspects of her, but actually she has solar aspects that are often kind of glossed over. Um, when we look at the symbology of the Rider Waite card, we have this child on the back of a white horse. And actually, in the Chaldean oracles, there is a description that when you call upon Hekate, you will begin to perceive a child mounted on the back of a swift horse, a child of fire, or a child enwrapped in gold, or again naked. And so there is this aspect that this calling on Hecate kind of manifests through these different ways of viewing connection with the divine. And obviously the sunflowers, they are quite a symbol of sun and solar. They track the sun through the sky. And it also, again, in the Chaldean oracles, Hecate is associated with this flower of fire. She's described as having this sort of aspect. And again, sunflowers, dandelions, those kind of fiery, leonine, solar plants are all very linked to Hecate. And also the fact that there's a child on this, the statue, the little headless statue on the right, is one of Hecate Kurotrophos, the nourisher of youths, and she has a baby in her arms and a little dog by her feet. And so again, that you can see parallels when you start to sort of connect little dots together. And again, she was linked with the sun god Helios. In the myth of Demeter and Persephone, Helios is the one that witnesses the abduction. Hecate only hears it from her cave, but it's Hecate that takes Demeter to Helios and says, "What do you know?" Because Helios was not going to do it off his own back. He was just going to go, "Yeah, I've seen it. I'm not really getting involved." But Hecate is the push that kind of orchestrates basically the truth coming out, which then leads to the whole rest of the story. And there is an interesting passage in a play called The Root Cutters by Sophocles, where it says, "O Master Helios and sacred fire, O spear of Hecate of the crossroads, which she bears as she travels Olympus." And so again, you kind of got this connection between her and Helios, this aspect of a flaming spear, which can kind of be seen in that sort of flag of the with the red flag on a pole. And
Right. Yeah, it could be a
yeah,
torch thing.
and
Yeah.
and obviously you've got the sun in the background, this
Yeah.
very blazing one. The little gold figure, again, that's sort of sat there with the big round corona around her head, and the little baby on her. I think that's the Hittite sun goddess Erina holding a child. And again, there are tantalizing sort of tidbits that kind of say that maybe there is a connection between Hecate and these older goddesses in other regions. And yeah, she just has these. Well, I'm hoping that I've kind of illustrated that she kind of cropped up everywhere.
Well, what you have illustrated is that you have a vast knowledge.
There's little room for anything else in here apart from Hecate stuff.
What did you study? Did you
Um,
study?
so yeah. I mean, I studied English language, and then I studied media studies. My actual qualification is in journalism. I studied journalism at university.
Okay.
Um, but I've always wanted to sort of write, and this aspect of my, I suppose, my spiritual life and my work with the goddess is kind of just something I've always had. I've always had that interest in antiquity and mythology and the esoteric, even from the age of a young age. So
I
I've kind of just do it.
yeah, I really I'm really impressed, and you have given me quite a few new ideas. You know what I would really love to see on your YouTube channel would be just a few short clips for one card each on your Hecate stuff, and I think this would be a great series
Yeah,
which many people would watch. I would watch it. So yeah, I think we have to come to a close now, because I also have another life later going on, but I would love to chat to you more about this. If you're not too busy, we can perhaps talk about around the time when Hecate is very popular, around Samhain, and or whatever time there is, because I really would like to know more. and I'm sure people who have watched want to know more. And as far as I'm gathering, you're now kind of starting to get your knowledge out into the world.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, since the Oracle was released, and I'm trying to sort of put more information out there. So obviously, the little guidebook that comes with the Oracle is not very big. It's low scarabeo, multilingual,
I know, yeah, yeah.
standard. Um, so I am working on a fuller, detailed book, which will go into a lot more information about the actual history of the cards, as well as more divinatory meanings. And off the back of this talk that I did that led to to us being here today, I am actually working with Chris on the first steps of actually making this a complementary tarot deck, which will
Uh,
be a big project. So
I really will buy this for sure. um, I'm not a Hekate expert, but Demeter Eulis says there are special. She has her own holidays. Which are these?
So there are festivals from antiquity that she is either associated with. The most common sacred day for her is what was known as it was basically the dark of the moon. So at the end of every month, when we can't see the moon,
Okay.
um, that is what is the day that people would take offerings to the crossroads, or the Hecate suppers, which were things like garlic and honey and eggs that would be offered at the crossroads. There are she's linked actually in August. We've just had the Nemoralia, which is linked with Diana as a torch bearing goddess, but there is a synonymous link between her and Hecate again because of this moon and torch, and sort of the conflation between the two. So that is still kind of observed by modern pagans, either as the Nemoralia, the Feast of Torches, or sometimes it's referred to as the Hekatean Ides. It kind of not it kind of happens at the same time as the height of the Perseid meteor shower, so between sort of like the 11th and 15th, but most people tend to celebrate it on the 13th of August.
Well, that's over now, but we're pretty
Yeah, so
close to that one.
yeah, like I say, we just had that one. But yeah, the most one that people have that associated with it the most are the dark moons.
Okay. Yeah, I know about the dark moons. I just thought there's a special day. Okay. So, every dark moon we will meet up again. There are some eclipses going on this autumn, so perhaps then, if you're up to this. Um, I really enjoyed this. Thank you very much, Ken.
No, thank you for having me on and letting me waffle.
Yeah, I'm sure people don't think it as being waffling. I don't. Um, I need to come to a close now, but we will waffle on at another point. I will be on next Monday again with an English talk. I don't tell you yet who it is, but I have two English people next week, so stay tuned. And yeah, thanks a lot that you have been here, dear Ken. Do you want
Thank
to
you.
say anything before we
Um,
go?
yeah, just thank you for having me on, Kirsten, and thank you for the people that are watching. I hope it's been educational and interesting. Um, and yeah, I'm hoping to really sort of build on this and extrapolate it properly and get get more information out there.
You will, I'm sure. It sounds like you uh, are born for this. So, speak to you later. Speak to you later. Bye. Ciao.